I think WordPress, one of the natural affinities we have to it is open and flexible. So with those kind of benefits at play, it's naturally going to beat a proprietary platform out of the box.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Ben May, who's the Managing Director at The Code Company. Ben, great to have you.
Thank you.
Ben, tell us a little bit about what The Code does and sort of what you bring to your clients that maybe the average digital agency does not.
Sure. So we're a technical development agency, so we really stripped back a lot of parts of what a typical agency dynamic looks like. We've really focused within the WordPress ecosystem and coming from a place of technical engineering background. So there's obviously a really wide spectrum of agencies that work both in web, digital, and marketing and everything like that. So we really stick to that core element of engineering, which ties into performance and scaling and things like that. And within the WordPress ecosystem, which there's no shortage of demand for that kind of work.
Are there any type of clients in specific verticals that you tend to gravitate towards?
So I guess at the moment, we're really sticking around WordPress, which has a few natural affinities, things like digital publishing being a really big player, and also marketing to the extent where they are doing more advanced content strategies. So where WordPress is kind of being pushed a little harder than it does out of the box. So engaging someone like us are able to really help integrate and implement a system that works in the WordPress way. So we'll have lower maintenance costs, or things will work better typically.
WordPress got an incredible shot in the arm with the latest version of WordPress earlier this year. The new editor experience and blocks. How do you think that changes the game for folks with WordPress?
I think without it too much of a cliche, it is a bit of a game changer, and it definitely repositions WordPress or brings it up to other systems that it's competing against directly or indirectly, in the sense that it's giving people who are managing content a lot more flexibility. I know we've worked with design agencies and partners before who have been kind of doing this through different ways, but the concept of what a block is, and sort of distilling that down to really reusable pieces on a site. So we're seeing the discussion now turn to sort of, when building out a site, talking about a block first kind of approach of what reusable elements can we bring and build throughout a site. So 5-10 years ago, the discussion may have been we need 6 templates and design 6 templates. That is now starting to transition to more of a block-based discussion. Gutenberg and sort of WordPress supporting that out of the box really makes that discussion really, really obvious, and lets us architect the CMS to work the same way as a design agency may be working.
How do you think now with the latest version of WordPress, it stacks up now against other competitive CMSs, both at the high end with your Adobes and Sitecores, all the way down to your Squarespaces and things like that?
I think WordPress, one of the natural affinities we have to it is open and flexible. So with those kind of benefits at play, it's naturally going to beat a proprietary platform out of the box. That said, there's still some work, I think, in defining and building out on top of that more of the digital experience platform as we all move towards more richer experiences. And I think that comes back down to even the definition of what a content management system is. So like we talk about designing and building sites with blocks, coming back to even what content management is in terms of blocks on a page and how that feeds back into larger, more intelligent systems, rather than kind of having sort of a page for a particular product, having bits of content that all relate, and letting a more intelligent system with other systems at play build that content on the fly. So I think WordPress has the advantage of being open, being owned by a client. The data's there. We can build additional things that we may not be able to build on a platform. So it gives us that flexibility. I don't think it yet is competing on some of those levels, but I think we're definitely making strides in the right direction. And whether it becomes WordPress's job or other tools, I think it's setting up all the parameters for that.
So along those lines, you've been working, at the code with WordPress at scale, and also with some incredible e-commerce integrations, whether WooCommerce or Magento or Shopify or any of them. How do you approach these e-commerce opportunities with clients, and how do you kind of steer them through the various options that they have from an e-commerce perspective?
Right. I mean, e-commerce, I think, has become, it's sort of grown, especially within the WordPress ecosystem, and a lot of e-commerce, a lot of open source products as well, have sort of been developed by sort of programmers, late 90s, early 2000s, and as these sort of tools have matured, the marketplace has got so much bigger, traffic, all these kinds of things that people are moving online to buy, things like that. So there's this odd dynamic where we have tools like WooCommerce that work really well and tick a lot of boxes to a certain point. And we're finding that at a certain scale, it starts to unravel. And by no fault of its own, it just hasn't been designed that way growing up. Whereas, say, a Shopify has been a lot newer to market, so they don't have the sort of problems of legacy to manage. So it's an interesting place where there's a lot of different speeds that vendors are competing at and getting things out. Definitely things like WooCommerce and open source products, Magento, etc. Their strongest advantage is around having access to data, having functionality that can be built that a closed source product won't let you do. So it's really having those discussions on, you can definitely do a lot more from a flexibility perspective by going open source, but there's a cost both from a development and management perspective that a SaaS product would sort of let you look after by itself.
One of the constant digs historically against WordPress had always been security. Do you think we finally moved past that, where it's really no longer the concern that it once was?
It's definitely not the concern it was, and I think that's purely by the state of large enterprises, companies, publishers, government that are using it. So that adoption has really helped in sort of squashing some of those fears that we'll get on an initial call, especially with, say, a technology director or CIO, CTO, who's not necessarily familiar with WordPress, but maybe getting pressure from their teams internally. And we'll see an article once in a while about a WordPress site getting hacked. Often it comes down to something like passwords or something that wasn't necessarily the fault of the product.
Updates weren't necessarily.
Exactly, and this is I guess a dilemma with WordPress. A lot of people would come across that it is used in these ginormous contexts where security and things have been really fine-tuned, but it can also be spun up in 10 minutes and follow a tutorial and up it is. So it's hard to judge that situation where it has had 10 minutes of scrutiny versus going through penetration testing and development, code review, peer review, external audits, all that sort of stuff. So I think the adoption has really helped sort of knock most of that argument out, and a lot of the other things we can do by showing process and things like that. So that's worked in our favor.
There's been an explosion. You've probably seen the Scott Brinker reports, the Martech, reports. With that explosion, we also saw, an acquisition actually just this morning of Acquia, of Mautic by Acquia. Do you think ultimately, this kind of points to open source solutions triumphing over proprietary solutions? Or do you think it's just a question of putting together the best sort of solutions?
I think it definitely shows some intent that open source is not going backwards, and that there's definitely a compelling reason for a lot of organizations to leverage an open source product, especially as we're kind of entering this new realm of data and data capture. Where does that data live? And if you're sort of locked into a vendor of a proprietary platform, is that a for life engagement, or how do you get that data back out to potentially move to another system? So it's definitely on people's radar of how to evaluate. And if you're using something like an open source CMS to render content, there's going to be a natural affinity to doing that a bit further down, especially if these really advanced and fine-tuned products can do the work that a proprietary one can do.
Ben, what technology are you most excited about incorporating in the digital experiences that you build for your clients in the future?
I think we're still at a spot where AI and data and machine learning, things like that, are still still a bit of a buzzword and not seen executed exceptionally well anywhere at this stage. Even if you look beyond content management at the largest companies and marketing automation and AI, something like an airline should know better than to email me about going to a destination the day I've just got to that destination and things like that, where they have all of this data already. So there's a lot of talk about AI, and I think it's very exciting as a technologist to see what we could be building out and creating more intelligent applications. But I think there's definitely a lag in marketing teams and organizations that are willing to invest in data and data people to connect all of these dots and to write these rules and things like that. It can't really be left on the desk of a marketing manager or a developer to connect all of these things and work out rules and patterns and all that sort of stuff. But that, I think, is something where we're talking about it a lot more, but I'm still yet to see really great executions of smart applications and things like that.
Ben, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
That was Ben May, the Managing Director at The Code Company.